So again, Jason and Laura, welcome, and thank you for being up here and sharing a bit of your story. And for those of you that don't know Jason and Laura Freeman, they've been coming to Woodside about 12 or 13 years now. Laura grew up here at Woodside, and then after they got married, eventually made their way back. Young people, that's the pattern, okay, that you make your way back. They have 3 kids, all around the teen years. And about a year ago, a little over a year ago, October 16th, something happened that would change their lives, something unexpected. And we've asked Jason and Laura if they'd share some of their story with us. So, Jason, would you take us back to that night in October when you were working?
All right, so I was working. I don't remember the accident. We were working a night shift. We had to lower about a 2,000-pound piece of equipment to the ground, do some work on it, and lift it back into place. We had almost had it back in place, and that was when that's when I don't remember things at all. One of the points of the ceiling broke, and the equipment hit me in the stomach, and I went flying backwards. I fell down 7 feet. I landed on my head on a cement floor. They figured that I hit my head, then my back when I landed. Adrenaline takes over, and I sat up right away. Then my coworkers convinced me to lay down, and they applied pressure to the cut in my head since it was bleeding. Paramedics came in, and the report that says that I refused help. I took my neck brace off that they had put on me, and I threw it. They were unsure of what more damage I could have done to myself. I don't remember much until Wednesday. People have asked if I would do the job differently, but we talked about how we wanted to do the job before we started, and if I had to do it again, I would do it basically in the same way. So.
Wow. So you can imagine Jason at night working with this big piece of machinery and the accident, and then Laura, you're at home. Would you tell us kind of about those first 24 hours there?
So it was 4:30 in the morning, and our doorbell went. I sat up, grabbed my phone. Jason and I share each other's location on our Google Maps, and I quick grabbed my phone to see where he was. Here I was at home, middle of the night, 3 kids, and startled by the doorbell. I saw that he was at home, and so I got up, started going to the door. Doorbell went again, and I actually got mad. I was mad at him for ringing the doorbell the second time. I'm going to be waking up the kids. All those thoughts go through your head. I opened the door to find Ryan, Jason's coworker, standing there holding Jason's phone in his hand. He said, "Laura, there's been an accident. Can I come in?" Ryan is not just a coworker. Ryan's been a friend for 20 years. Is normally in the office, but was working with Jason on the road that night. And I was looking back, that's the first time we saw God in our story. We sat at our kitchen table, and Ryan explained to me what had happened during the accident, but he didn't know what the injuries were. We called the hospital together, and they told me that they were transferring him to the trauma ICU unit in Hamilton because his injuries were too severe for any local hospital. Ryan drove me to Hamilton, and while we drove, he prayed with me. And looking back, I fully believe that God put Ryan at work with Jason that night and to be the one to come to our home. Jason's nurse met me at the elevator doors of the trauma ICU and explained how I'd find my husband, that he wouldn't look like the one I was used to seeing. She took my hand, and we walked into his room, and I immediately felt warmth over my whole body. I was at such peace and felt God's immediate presence.
And then, Laura, you heard about Jason's injuries. Could you share some of them?
So within the first 6 hours, 12 different doctors and specialists came in to discuss Jason's different injuries and expressed that the recovery would be long and gave an estimate of 9 to 12 weeks in the ICU alone. He had 3 brain bleeds, brain swelling, his brain had shifted, there was a fracture in his skull, he had fractured his eye socket, he had fracture in his neck, 5 fractures in his back, 6 broken ribs, and a punctured lung. And while we were in the hospital, he developed bacterial infection in his good lung. Multiple doctors were amazed that Jason had no internal organ damage after being hit by such a heavy piece of machinery. They often used words when they would come in and talk to me, like unfathomable and remarkable. But what I remember from that first day was the words the neurologist said to me. He said, "Laura, we don't know yet if or where Jason is paralyzed, but he's alive, and that's a win in our books." I remember praying while I was waiting for the neurologist to come back about an hour later to test Jason's movements, and I remember praying, saying, "God, Jason needs his hands. Give him his hands." And at one point, as I was praying throughout that hour, I remember saying, "Lord, if he's paralyzed from the neck down, he won't want to live. Take him. I know where he's going." Throughout the next few days, Jason suffered from withdrawal from the heavy pain meds that they had put him on, causing a lot of drastic personality change. Monday was the first day I cried. After being caught off guard from my husband yelling at me, which had never happened in our 17 years of marriage. The part that caught me off guard the most was the neurologist that day had said that Jason's personality could be permanently changed because of the damage that had taken place in his brain. Driving home that night, I remember yelling at God in my head after having a very awful and hard testing day. As I was coming up that Hamilton hill, the song "I Believe Now" by Sidewalk Prophets came on my radio, and it goes like this. "My God, I remember when I cried, shook my fist up at the sky. I wondered why you felt so far from me. Oh God, it was in my deepest pain that I heard you call my name, and I heard you say that you were right there with me." Tears started flowing down my face, and it hit me. Here I was yelling at God, who had already shown himself in so many ways. The next day, I was driving back to Hamilton, and I was talking to a friend, and she wisely told me, as I was telling her how guilty I felt for yelling at God, she said, "Yell all you want. He can take it. He already knows what you're going to say before you even say it. He's got you."
And Laura and Jason, how, again, in this last year, how's it affected your family, something, there, and then with coworkers and your church family? Could you share some of those experiences?
Sure. So through the time that Jason was in the hospital, I was able to share with our kids the power of prayer. The magnitude of the prayers being lifted up for our family worldwide, and that faith can move mountains. I texted many friends to keep them in the loop with Jason's journey, and a coworker at that time said to me, "I don't know how you have such a strong faith in something you can't see. It's remarkable." We were able to share our faith with many through our journey, and we pray that God, through this, that God has shown themselves to them. This journey has taught us many things, but one thing that would stick out when we look back and talk about it is humility. We've been very humbled by this experience, from the help we were shown from our family and friends, to having to do everything for Jason when he came home. After 6 days, they discharged him because there was no more room in the hospital. All the ICU beds were filled, and they thought that he would be safer in our own home because of the sickness that was going around. When Jason first came home, I became his medical team. My sister moved in with us and took on our day-to-day tasks so that I could take care of Jason. Feeding him, showering him, dressing him, getting in and out of bed, to figuring out the multiple pain management and the multiple medication that they sent him home with, to simple things like reading his texts to him as he wasn't allowed to be on a screen for 3 months. That just became our new normal. And for what at the time looked like a failed healthcare system was something that just brought us closer together. For better or worse, in sickness and health was said often to each other. But as we walked through this shadow, we have felt love. Our family has not felt alone. We found hope in the darkness. From the prayers that were being lifted up for us, from people we knew and many people we didn't know, the food that was dropped off at the door, and the little texts of encouragement that came, this is how the body of Christ should feel, and we are so forever grateful. A verse that steadies me during this time was, "I'll show up and take care of you, as I promised, and bring you back home. I know what I'm doing. I have planned it all out the plans to take care of you, not to abandon you, plans to give you hope for a future." Jeremiah 29:10 and 11.
Any last thoughts? And could you just share kind of where you are now, a year later, both of you? Yep.
So Jason was discharged from all the doctors and specialists this past June, and he was labeled a medical mystery. But we know that he is a miracle from God, and that God healed his every injury. For me, there's always that lingering thought in the back of my head of when that ball is going to drop. I believe wholeheartedly that God healed Jason. But in the back of my mind, that question of, did he heal too fast? What long-term effects are waiting for us down the road? Recently, Jason worked a night shift. He got called in while he was on call and had to go in, and it was through the night. And I remember laying in bed, not sleeping, just staring at the ceiling, looking at the clock, and almost waiting for that doorbell to ring again. But God always seems to remind me that his faithfulness is great. Promises, the song Promises by the Maverick City, is a song that I play often, or when it comes on the radio, it always gets turned up a little bit louder. And it goes like this: "Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast. And let my heart learn that when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. I put my faith in Jesus, an anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. No, he'll never let me down. Great is your faithfulness to me. In every season, great is your faithfulness to me." And this is how we look at the accident when we look back. It's a season. We don't know why the accident happened, and we probably never will. But God has walked every step with us, and we can't be more grateful that he was right there with us. This season would have been extremely dark without him.
Laura and Jason, we as a church family, we commend you for your faith during this past year. From one view under the sun, it was just bad luck. You were in the wrong place and something just bad happened to you. But you both know that there's a God who's in control, and he allowed it. Like you said, you don't know why. But during that whole time, you trusted in him, and you know he's got you. And so we just commend you for your faith.